think we are going to get started. Okay. Morning. Morning. Yep. Thank you. Sorry, we don't use the microphones here, so I appreciate everyone. Well, welcome again to yet another exciting edition of the Governor and Executive Council meeting. A pretty robust agenda to get to today, which is pretty good. I want to begin by thanking, I don't know if she's here, but Commissioner Hanks. Commissioner, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Who hosted our breakfast meeting this morning over at the Women's Prison, the Women's Correctional Facility, which was really, it's an amazing facility, one of the newest facilities in the country, really. State-of-the-art and hopefully a model and something to emulate as we look to push the legislature to make sure we're making investments in the other facilities that we need across the state. But it's really great, and we thank you and the staff. You know, you're always short-staffed, and that's something we discuss all the time with the Executive Council, but for making the time and having breakfast and being able not just to answer our questions, but taking us on a little tour of the facility as well. It was really great. So if you'll all please just rise for a moment. So I'm going to kick us off just with a little prayer and then the pledge. Dear Lord, please bless us and grant us wisdom as we do work with the citizens here in the state of New Hampshire. Please allow us to make the best decisions with respect, humility, and wisdom. Amen. And now to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you so much. Now, as we always like to do, we like to kick off our Executive Council meetings on the right note. And we are honored today to have New Hampshire's Artist Laureate, Theo Marte. Here. I wanted to take a minute and have to just talk a little bit about, as the New Hampshire Arts Story. Like, you're all over the place. There's thousands, I think, of talking to schools and groups and all this sort of thing. And talk about that in terms of what the response is and kind of what you think we need to be doing next.
First, I would like to say thank you to the governor, and also, thank you to the executive council for, appointing me as the New Hampshire Artist Laureate 2022 to 2024. It's been a great honor, and I really appreciate it to be the New Hampshire Artist Laureate. My work has been into the schools and working with a lot of schools, high schools, elementary schools, junior, college level, university, and I'll go to everywhere sharing their love of music, sharing their love of dance, and also rhythm, with the schools, changing people's life or kids' life, people that didn't get a chance to be involved in things together with friends. So when I come in, mostly I bring everybody together. If you know how to do it or you don't know how to do it together, we build a team that, we can all play together. So my mission is to share with the kids, let them, know more about African rhythms or the world music, that they can also, take something with them as they grow or travel around the world. They have, something, that they have in their sleeves, that they can also, go around the world. So, my school, being in schools, it's always, great thing to, share with the kids. And then I love, what I do as a musician, and I love, changing people's life and, giving them the light so they can shine as well. Thank you for having us. Probably with drums, and then the djembe, and then I have the talking drum here. But together, I would like to share something with everybody, with everyone here. So what we're gonna do is we say Fanga. Everybody here, Fanga. Alafia. Ashe, Ashe. Ashe, Ashe. Praise, praise. May peace be with you.
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 Fanga, Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. Fanga, Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. Fanga, Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. Fanga, Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. 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 Fanga, Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. Fanga, Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. Thank you so much.
Participation you've ever made in the executive council. Can we get a picture? Okay, great. Why don't the come up? You can get that. It almost sounds normal.
Nice job.
that's how you get the council to say what you want them to say. Absolute miracle. If I knew it was that easy. If I knew it was all that easy. Okay, now, we also have some students here, and it is getting to the end of the school year, but we always love to highlight a lot of the community partners and the organizations and the folks that are all over the state that are just making things happen in their community. So we have the students from the Kennett High School Key Club. Why don't you guys come on up? Let's give them a hand. Hey, how are you? Yeah, pleasure. Yes, nice to meet you. Good to see you. How are you? Good to see you. Here, come on up here. How are you? Hi. How are you? Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. Hi. Hey, good to see you. Hey, nice to meet you. Hey, thank you for coming. Nice to see you. Wow, a lot of you. Nice to see you. Hey, how are you guys? Come on up. So, before we're going to recognize the Kennett High School Key Club for all the amazing things. There are key clubs all over the state, which is pretty great. I've been able to, as governor, being able to go around and talk about the different types of projects, organizations that the key club is working with, because every key club seems to be a little bit different. So, you guys come from Kennett, obviously, so community-driven. Talk about some of the things that you kind of focus your efforts on, because I'm sure there's 1,000 different things you would choose to do as part of the key club in terms of serving the community.
Yes, of course. So this year we had our second annual Ski for Sunshine, which is a ski-a-thon for Camp Sunshine. I will say a lot of the getting it together was done by amazing Vice President Molly Dalawali here. But this year we raised $15,000 to go straight to Camp Sunshine.
Oh, that's wonderful. Every year has a different project that the club takes on?
It's back and forth. I think for many past years, we've just kind of raised money for all our district projects like Camp Sunshine and Children Peace International. But the last 2 years, we have been focusing on like Camp Sunshine and that big ski-a-thon, because in our area, there's like 5 different ski resorts.
Yes.
So, yeah, so it's a big thing that our community loves to do, and an easy way to raise so much funds for the amazing camp.
That's great. And so when I first got to high school, I had no idea what key club was. I had no idea. In fact, I think not until like the sophomore year did I kind of figure out like.
Me too.
Yeah, right. Because a lot of people don't realize. Did you guys know what key club was? What kind of got you interested and involved in it?
Well, I was actually part of, Ski Club has got a different level, and one of the levels is called Dickens, which is a group for elementary school students.
Oh.
So I was part of TKs in my elementary school. So I knew about Ski Club then, but then when I joined the Key Club at the high school level, then I kind of cycled through 4 years, but that's obviously not a recommendation. I really have joined partway through high school.
Yeah, I didn't join until my sophomore year because freshman year was really busy. So I joined sophomore year when it was COVID, and it was an easy way in my schedule. It was all online. And then as the years went by, I just fell in love with the club. I ran for president this year, so I'm just grateful for the club.
And is this everybody in the club?
No, there's more people.
Yeah. So how many are in the club approximately? 52 kids in high school. That's a lot. That's one of the bigger clubs in high school.
It is. It's one of our biggest.
That's awesome. That's great. Okay, so we have a commendation here recognizing the Kennett High School Key Club, whereas for over 40 years, Kennett High School Key Club has made a positive impact on the school and the local communities that they serve. Whereas Key Club is an organization that gives its members the opportunity to serve the community, build character, and develop their leadership skills, doing so in caring and in an inclusiveness way to maximize the impact they've had in all their efforts. And whereas Kennett High School Key Club is recognized as one of the top performing clubs in the New England district, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for charities throughout the region, and whereas Kennett High School Key Club members have contributed over 58,000 hours of community service over the last 40 years to support programs such as the Believe in Books Literacy Foundation, the American Cancer Society, the Laura Foundation for Autism and Epilepsy, and numerous other projects. And whereas the members of the Kennett High School Key Club have demonstrated an excellent record of leadership and service and are exemplary young citizens who should be applauded for all they've done for their community. Now, therefore, I, Christopher T. Sununu, Governor of the State of New Hampshire, do hereby commend the Kennett High School Key Club for their dedication and hard work and encourage them to continue building on their impressive record of service. Thank you guys so much. over this way. Great, great, thank you. Nice.
Congratulations.
Hold on. Here's what. Because I'm very passionate about my birthday. Nice. Yeah, excellent. What year? How much are you?
We're two seniors.
Senior? Junior? Sophomore? Freshman. So a little bit of the whole group? That's awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you guys for coming all the way down.
Thank you for
Thank you. See you. Okay. Okay. So moving forward, we'll officially call this meeting of the Governor and Executive Council to order. Let's begin by asking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes of our March 22nd, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Good motion and second. Any discussion or items to change within those meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. Next, from the Office of the Secretary of State, we have our civil commissions. Can I please have a motion to confirm the list of civil commissions? Are there any additional names to place on the list? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the list of civil commissions as submitted, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The list of civil commissions is concluded. We have a few resignations to accept today. From the Board of Licensure of Interpreters for the Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing, could I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Catherine Lawrence of Hooksett? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That resignation is accepted. From the Board of Nursing, could I please have a motion to accept the resignation of Melanie Champagne of Boston? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That resignation is accepted. From the Lakes Management Advisory Committee, can I have a motion to accept the resignation of Shane Brent of Straddle?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Shane's resignation is accepted. And from the Mechanical Licensing Board, could I have a motion to accept the resignation of Steve Gusera of Concord?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Stephen's resignation is accepted. That concludes resignations for today. Moving on, we have our confirmations. Can I begin by having a motion to confirm Curtis Grassett of Hancock to the Board of Home Inspectors?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Curtis is confirmed. Could I please have a motion to confirm Dennis Goulet of Manchester as the Commissioner of the Department of Information Technology?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Dennis. I'm just grateful he keeps coming into work. God bless you. Nothing would work without you, buddy. We're very grateful. Could I please have a motion to confirm Janet Bouchard of Guilford as the Deputy Director of the Division of Motor Vehicles for the Department of Safety?
Chairman, I move Janet Bouchard of Guilford to the Deputy Director of the Division of Motor Vehicles, Department of Safety.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Janet's confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Jim Tutoni of Seabrook to the Fish and Game Commission?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Jim's confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Robert Maloney of Holderness to the New Hampshire Retirement System Board of Trustees?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Robert is confirmed. Can I have a motion to confirm Robert Goldner of Alexandria to the New Hampshire Veterans Home Board of Managers?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Robert is confirmed. Can I have a motion to confirm Joel Ginsberg of Beverly, Massachusetts to the new Motor Vehicle Arbitration Board?
So moved.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Joel's confirmed. Could I have a motion to confirm Jonathan Wood of Raymond to the Real Estate Appraisers Board?
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying none. Oh, sorry, saying aye. Sorry. All over the place. Why bring it up to me? Any opposed? With that, Jonathan is confirmed. Can I please have a motion to confirm Sean Crew of Dunstable, Mass. to the State Board of Fire Control?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sean is confirmed. And now could I please have a motion to confirm Andrea Brochu of Jefferson to the Volunteer New Hampshire Board of Directors?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same is confirmed. And that concludes our confirmations today. I do have a few nominations to read into the record. To the Advisory Board on Private Investigative Agencies, Bail Recovery Agents, and Security Services, I nominate Brian Martineau of Manchester. To the Advisory Council on Unemployment Compensation, I nominate Matt Kafori of Manchester. To the Agricultural Advisory Board, I nominate Matt Scruton of Rochester. As the Assistant Director for New Hampshire Homeland Security and Emergency Management from the Department of Safety, I nominate Megan Hoskins of Manchester. As the Director of the New Hampshire State Veterans Cemetery within the Department of Military Affairs and Veteran Services, I nominate Sean Buck of Bow. As the Director of Project Development for the Department of Transportation, I nominate William Oldenburg of Bow. To the Independent Investment Committee, I nominate Christine Clinton of Dublin. As a Justice of the New Hampshire Superior Court, I nominate Ann Edward Parker of Milford. To the Merrimack River Valley Flood Control Commission, I nominate Stephen Slavinsky of Lee. And to the Public Water Access Advisory Board, I nominate Andrea Lamoro of Plymouth. And that concludes today's nominations. So moving on, we have our consent calendar agenda. We'll just make an initial note that item 5A within that agenda has been removed by the department. But noting the removal of 5A, could I begin by having a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any items to take off for further discussion? Councilor Kenny?
4D and 5H.
4D, Department of Justice, and 5H, State Treasury. Any other items to... Okay. Seeing that, could all in favor of the consent calendar agenda, with the exception of item 1A, 4D, and 5H, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items have been approved. Could I get a motion to adopt the consent calendar agenda with item 1A?
So moved.
Discussion. Yeah, this is from safety. Commissioner, oh, there he is.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Governor, council members, for the record, Bob Quinn from Safety.
Commissioner, 1A, I just wanted to that I understand is current action, because it's attaching a member of safety to do a couple of inspections of a modular building program in another state. And I'm just trying to figure out what our roles and responsibilities in safety when it comes to modular home programs in the state of New Hampshire. But finally, we have a lot of safety inspections.
We routinely do this because part of their role is because eventually these modules are going to come to New Hampshire, so they go out to the factories and inspect to make sure they're built to the standards that are required. I mean, I can get the level of detail you need, but this has been going on for quite some time.
So one of the issues many years ago, probably still today, ones and two cases where the modular home gets placed in and then, they can't get a certificate of occupancy, and then the owner or the person who arranged to have this modular home put on a foundation somewhere, they end up, leaving the state or, basically don't take care of the business and get the certificate of occupancy. Does safety have any role as far as enforcement of modular homes?
We do, and the fire marshal could speak to this more specifically than I do. As you know, he is an engineer, but to the point where the step that you step out of the home, step on, how wide it can be, the depth of the tread, so they pay close attention to this. I can offline, maybe.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious why we, how do we pick these sites versus other sites, and are we managing these kind of modular homes coming into the state? Because I know, as a former legislator, early in my council years, we had some really severe problems. But I haven't heard more recently, so obviously we're doing a good job, but I just was curious.
No, it's a great question. Again, it's something I had to learn when I came into this job, because I knew nothing about it, but we do play a role in it, and they do go out, and actually go to the factory to make sure, whether it's, how thick the plywood is, the sheet, how are they being built. And again, when they hit New Hampshire, we also play a role in it, as we a lot of times do the escorts to get them through the state.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll work offline with you on that if that works.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So what I'm curious about is who pays for this? The state of New Hampshire paying for it. When I order manufactured housing, it's different from modular. I pay for the third-party inspections, not the state of New Hampshire. So who's paying for this?
The state. He's a state employee.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of consent calendar agenda item 1A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Could I get a motion to adopt consent calendar agenda item 4D for the Department of Justice? Questions from the Attorney General?
Attorney General, off agenda item question last Friday, court in Amarillo, Texas, a federal judge ruled, issued an injunction staying the FDA's decision to approve the drug mifepristone, which is used by women across our country and across our state when they seek safe, legal abortion care. There is a case, Washington versus FDA, where 17 attorneys general, 17 states, plus the District of Columbia, have joined that case. That judge issued an order which will presumably protect those states from the effects of that Texas decision. Can you answer why New Hampshire has not joined that lawsuit?
Sure. I think just in answering that, it's important to just step back and say that as we sit here today, there is no change in the status quo because the decision that came out of Texas has been the judge stayed that for 7 days to give the government a chance to appeal to the Fifth Circuit. So I just do want to make that clear.
That 7 days is up this Friday.
It is. It's up this Friday. Yeah. But as we sit here today, so I just want to make that point clear because I know I can't. As to the case in Washington, I've read both of the decisions. That case started as a challenge to a change that the Biden administration had implemented, and the relief that the court there gave went beyond just blocking that change. It ordered the government the FDA not to make any change to the status quo. So I just think it's important to know that that case didn't begin really as a case aimed at preserving the status quo writ large and stopping any effect from the Texas decision. What we've seen now is this decision out of Texas and the decision out of Washington, where the judge there, I think, went further than he had to go. He had his reasons to do that, to maintain the entire status quo. So it wasn't apparent to anyone that that was going to be the result of the Washington decision. So that's one reason why we wouldn't have initially joined it. We wouldn't have necessarily joined a challenge to some action the Biden administration had taken. So we didn't look at it very closely. We didn't have any reason to think it was going to result in the decision it resulted in. We certainly didn't have any reason to think that those two decisions were going to come out on the same day and become entirely contradict each other. So I think the reality is the courts have created a very uncertain legal landscape here, and we're looking at it very closely. I've personally read both decisions. I'm dialed in on it. My team is looking at it to see what options we have and what are the best steps we can take to balance all the interests involved. But I think we were all caught by surprise when we had these two contradictory decisions come out on the same day, both with results that couldn't have necessarily predicted. Both judges, I think, went further than they had to go, and they created a very uncertain landscape.
Well, I would certainly agree with you that the judge in Texas was well beyond his authority. But at this point, when will you make a decision whether to join that suit? This is essential to protect the women of New Hampshire.
We'll make a decision soon on what we're going to do, whether it's to join that suit, take some other action, give some other guidance. We'll make that decision soon. But I think my philosophy is that in response to what appear to be unnecessary and probably overbroad decisions that have created uncertainty, I don't want to rush into some course of action. We want to understand how we got here and evaluate all our options so that we can take the best action necessary for our citizens. And that's what we're doing. So we're looking at it carefully. We'll make that decision soon. I understand the timeline. I understand that, at least as of now, the Texas decision goes into effect on Friday. That's all before the Fifth Circuit. We anticipate that they will act on that before Friday. And we'll make sure we understand the legal landscape as uncertain as it is, and we'll make determinations to it.
Will you consult with the governor in making that decision?
Absolutely.
Governor, I would urge you that our state join this suit and protect the women of New Hampshire from this overreaching and inappropriate and dangerous decision from Texas. There are other steps that you should be taking as governor to protect the women of our state. I called on you after the Dobbs decision to issue an executive order protecting providers. That issue is right in front of us now. That providers in this state that prescribe that drug are going to be at risk of prosecution from other states. Women who come here for services will be at risk of prosecution, so I urge you to look at that. Yesterday in the legislature, in the Senate Judiciary Committee, they killed the bill to remove the criminal penalties from your abortion ban. And I would urge you to relook at that and make sure you push the legislature to remove those criminal penalties. The damage that that's doing to our entire maternal fetal health care system cannot be overstated. We are losing providers. No one wants to come to a state where they can be criminally prosecuted for providing the health care they're trained to provide, and that is the standard of care. So I urge you to look at that, and I urge you to please do not sign a budget that doesn't include a codification of Roe v. Wade.
Further discussion on item 4D. I know, but Robert Baldridge has been pulled into it. Has nothing to do with what
The question is, has he banned abortion in the state of New Hampshire?
No.
So the answer is no.
The answer is no.
Okay. Thank you.
All in favor of item 4D, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 4D is approval. Good morning.
Good morning. We have
Something much more cheery. How are you guys?
How are you?
Good to see you. Enjoyed the tour?
Yeah.
And where are you all from?
New Hampshire.
Well, it could be anything. Everybody specificity.
What? Summersworth,
Summersworth.
yes. Maplewood School.
So who has Summersworth? Who's our executive council for Summersworth? Joe Kenny.
So who's your mayor of Summersworth? You don't know your mayor of Summersworth? Dana Hilliard, right? Okay, I work with Dana Hilliard in Summersworth. So I'm your executive counselor. We're basically a board of directors that work with the governor of New Hampshire. We help him run the executive branch of government. So how many branches of government are there? There are 8, 1, 2, 3, right? Legislature, judiciary, and the executive branch, right? Okay. So we've been around a long time, since about 1679. So we were here when there was a king of England that was overseeing New Hampshire. So we basically vote on contracts that are $10,000 or more, vote on state boards and commission and judicial appointments. Who wants to be a judge someday? Does anybody in this audience want to be a judge someday? Nobody wants to be a judge? Governor, that's why we don't have enough nominees. No one wants to be a judge. So would anybody like to oversee the state park system? We've got a couple there. So you would see Commissioner Stewart, and ask her what it would take to be commissioner in the future to oversee state parks. But we vote on all the agency leadership within state government. But it's kind of a fun job. But does anybody know who the governor of New Hampshire is? You do. Sununu. You say that emphatically. Okay, I like that. So, but just before you get to meet together, I do want to introduce our fellow executive councilors. From District 2, Cindy Warmington. District 3, Janet Stevens. District 4, Ted Gansas from Manchester. And District 5, Dave Wheeler from Milford. And I'm from Wakefield, not too far from Summersworth. I'm in and out of there all the time. It's a great little town, and a lot of stuff going on. I just heard you brought in a new shoe manufacturing factory that you all guys can work at someday in Summersworth. So with that, why don't you guys line up and go meet the governor?
Okay, come on down here. Come on down this way. How are you?
We could take
How's everybody? Yeah, how you doing? Good? Awesome. All right. I like that name. It's my life name. Yeah. Sure. You want to swatch Lots of homework. How you doing? Who's the guy?
Hey, how are you guys? Hey, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate that. Great introduction, Councilor. Fantastic. Civics 101. So we still have one more item on the consent calendar agenda. Could I get a motion to adopt the consent calendar agenda item 5H? Is a motion? Is there a second? Second. Motion and second. Any questions from the state treasury? Good morning. Madam Treasurer, is that what we're calling you? Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you, Monica. Very good?
Good morning.
Very good to see you, Travis. How are you, sir?
So Thank you, Madam Treasurer, for spending time with me yesterday to explain what's going on with this program. And I understand that we're making a move from the Ohio program that we're in to another state program. But in that process, I'm just concerned about this transition and how this is going to happen. What I asked you yesterday is the people who don't transition out of the current program into our new program, they will pay higher fees, right? Is that right?
That is correct. So thank you very much for the question. It's an important question and a valid one. Just because of the current partnership that we have, it's just the way this agreement was set up. Our current partner in the state of Ohio will keep this assets and the accounts. One of the incentives for us to want to change partners. So in our process, so we wanted to first push this agreement in place. So now that we have this agreement in place, the next step is to really try to work on the next step, to communicate to all of the current participants that we're switching providers, and we have 6 months to do that. So we acknowledge it's going to be a challenge, but we're going to look into any. First of all, we anticipate that the state of Ohio will cooperate with us. That's the first thing. It's just because, we've been partners with them for, it's going to be 6 years by the time we do this. We just firmly believe that they will work with us to obtain, essentially what we need is the names and contact information to be able to do this communication to our participants. Again, there's a possibility that we want to reach everybody. If we need to make, Director Say and I keep saying, if we need to make 800 phone calls to our current participants, we'll do that. So we'll do whatever it takes. If by chance some of these participants stayed in that plan, so yes, because we're not going to be partners with Ohio anymore, they will pay a higher fee. So that's, right now we have 19 basis points based on their assets invested. That's what they pay currently. The fee is going to change to 45 basis points if they stay with Ohio, because essentially they will be part of the national plan. They have 2 plans, one for Ohio residents and the other one is for the national plan, non-Ohio residents. So they will transition to that if they stay with that plan. But our message is going to be to communicate to all our disability community, account holders. New Hampshire is going to sponsor. We're just joining at different partnerships, so we're going to sponsor the same ABLE program, with just a different consortium. We're going to join a team of 18 states. It's going to be much better for the state, for account holders. It's going to be a challenge in the beginning, but we see this as a good change long term. So we're confident that we can, again, if we need to make 100 phone calls, we will do that. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, if I could. That's great. Thank you, Monica. So for the record, Chuck Sayer, Executive Director, Governance Commission on Disability. Per the enabling statute, the State Treasurer, Executive Director, are the co-administrators of New Hampshire's Able Savings Program. So the program was launched back in 2017. We currently have just a little over 886 accounts. And as those individuals, they have the opportunity to make a decision to join the new consortium, which is before you today, or to stay with Ohio. It's all about the messaging. In New Hampshire, we all know it, we do it differently. And when we launched the program in 2017 with no general funds, it was myself at the time, former state treasurer, and now Monica, and I that will reach out to the community and explain the benefits of the transition. So thankfully, at 6 months, when the current program terminates, we will roll up our sleeves and we'll do what it takes to explain to the existing community where their assets are and what they'd like to move. And then the alternative, as new individuals want to join, will have the resources of both offices.
So these are assets that the disability community has invested for themselves in a program that is tax exempt.
Tax-free, yes.
Tax-free program. And so now the state, these folks are just invested. You don't even know who they are. You don't have any contact information on them. You have no idea who they are. So it's going to be a real challenge for you to communicate this. So, and I understand that you have no budget for a communications plan. And you also are dealing with a community of people who have disabilities and may not be able to answer that phone call that they get. So I think that we're going to just really need to protect the investors here, make sure that we follow this along pretty carefully, find out if Ohio is going to cooperate with you, and they certainly have a financial incentive to just keep the information to themselves and keep those assets. But you know that they will, find out if they're going to, and then, you know, put a real communications plan in place. And, you know, government, they may need some funding to do this because, you know, they don't know who the folks are that they need to communicate.
We're certainly familiar with the no funding part. Actually, the statute says we can't use general fund for this program. So that's a challenge to start with. But you're absolutely correct. I think we're going to need a communications plan, a strategy. Obviously, we're launching a new program. We're changing the brand, and it is a big deal. One of the reasons why we wanted to share with all of you the importance of this program is still a very important program for the disability community. It is a tax advantage account, so we have to follow the IRS regulations. It has to be a rollover, so there is a way to work to do a rollover for everyone. We will do that. So we need to look into the details of what it will take for us to make it easier for the disability community. In addition to the existing partnerships that Director Saya has worked with, all of the relationships with the various agencies that are part of the disability community. So
it's a very fine way. It's really going back to basics, what it looked like 5 years ago, working with the Bureau of Developmental Services, working with the area agencies, because they were pivotal as advocates for also messaging. And we anticipate that that will be part of it also.
Keep us posted.
We absolutely will. And thank you for your consideration.
Further questions on item 5H? Hearing none, all in favor of item 5H, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That consent calendar has been approved. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Council.
So moving on to our regular agenda. Let's begin by asking for a motion to adopt agenda items 6 to 8 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Office of the Commissioner.
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Can I have a motion to adopt agenda items 8A and 9 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Finance and Procurement?
So moved.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion on 8A or 9? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Can I get a motion to adopt agenda items 10 through 14A from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Behavioral Health?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Warren.
Good morning, Board of Commissioner. Good morning, Commissioner. My question is about item number 14A. And I had reached out to Tasha yesterday on this, and I still don't really feel like I have clarification. But this contract was awarded to Integration Sciences, and I'm looking at the bid sheet, and they bid $300,000. And Keene State, the Institute of Keene State, is $149,900, so roughly half of what the awardee did in this. And when I look at the bid sheet, it has a cost section in it, but it has awarded the same number of points for cost on the budget to each of those two, even though one is half the cost of the other. And so I'm just not clear on why we are awarding this to an organization that bid twice as much when the quality metrics of us are incredibly close. So just wondering if you could explain that further.
So good morning. I'm Patsy Fox. I'm the Director of the Division for Behavioral Health. always is interesting when we have these situations where the results are very close for the points total. So first of all, the RFP specifies how the different components are going to be scored. So there is a provision within the RFP for this particular project and effort that was posted of what they would be, what criteria they would have to meet and how they would be scored on that. One of the key things with our procurement processes and our scoring teams is that they're not to look at a proposal and compare it to another. So they don't sit with them, all 9 of them, side by side and say, oh, well, how about this, how about this, how about that. They're all scored independently. So that happened in this case. And we have someone from the contracts unit who sits in and facilitates to ensure that that does not happen. And that there was no intention for this to be a low-cost award. So this was not bid out to see, what's the best price. It wasn't a widget that we were contracting for, preparing for. And then when it comes to the similar scores, the second bidder who scored second did have pluses and was credited for the reduced cost, half the cost. However, there were other concerns that were expressed by the team that did the scoring, which included the high administrative cost, or I won't say high, I'll say the administrative cost, as well as the staffing plan, and I guess that's where I'll stop.
Yeah, I just can't fathom how each one of them, under the cost section, receives a 55 score, when one of them did 150,000 and one did 100,000. I'm just not sure how that happened. I understand on the staffing list, the lower Keene State actually scored higher than the awardee. So, I mean, I really just don't know when you say you don't compare, when it comes to cost, how are you not comparing? How are you not scoring on a comparison basis when it comes to cost?
Robert Moore, Contracts Director.
Yeah, good morning, Robert Moore, Contracts Director at Hilton Human Services. So it's a great question. With request for proposals, as Katya said, it's not a low-cost bid. So we're looking against a set of criteria, one of which, reasonable costs is one of those criteria. So that does factor in, an unreasonably high cost, or in some cases, unreasonably low cost. So they're not actually proposing cost efficient to provide the services, but we're also looking at, as Katya said, the administrative rate, is that reasonable? Is the allocation of staff reasonable? Are the costs that they're actually proposing related to the services? And do they align with the objectives of the RFP? So while it's not common, and usually you'll see a strong correlation between lower costs and higher cost scores, it's not completely unheard of where a lower cost proposal would ultimately result in a higher score because of those other criteria that we're taking into consideration.
Councilor Stevens?
14A, this is a mapping of equivalent, identical, or similar services. So ultimately, you want to reduce redundancy and duplication. One of the vendor's clients, integrated services, is Starling Hitchcock. So my question is, this is a sole proprietor. There's only one candidate. Is there the risk of conflict of interest? Dartmouth Hitchcock has many of our contracts. So could you add to that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and we will expect Dartmouth to have conflict of interest policy and to not have that. But that's a really good point. We are a small state. We could have had any number of these awarded and have a severe situation, but we'll ensure that is a firewall.
But how can you ensure and guarantee parity if there's a sole proprietor and there's no one to default to assist them with this contract?
So, I'm not quite sure of your question. you're saying that if they do have a conflict and it arises, they would have nobody else to fall back on?
Exactly, yes. And Dr. Hitchcock is one of their clients.
I think I did not foresee that that would be an issue. Sure. We can develop a backup plan if that were the case. We're going to have a lot of our staff are going to be intimately involved in this process. And so it's not just one person who's doing all of this work. It's going to take a lot of work. And we have to have all of the players represented. But we do have Dartmouth as our doorways. For example, they're a doorway. But we also have many other who also you could consider might have similar conflicts. But point well taken, and we'll be on guard, and we'll make sure our staff are looking at that.
And did you look at the full roster? Were you able to obtain a full roster of clients?
I do not know. I have to check.
Thank you.
Further discussion? So, sorry. Well, I was just going to go back to Councilwoman. So, if you're rating on something, you're not rating it on cost.
That's right.
So you shouldn't say it's cost. Don't rate on cost if it says we're scoring on cost. Right? It sounds like you're scoring on cost basis to services provided or some other metric associated with cost in terms of value provided or something. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, so it's referred to as the cost proposal, which has multiple components. So not solely just on the total amount that they're asking.
Yeah.
Right, it's those other components.
So I guess I would say, because most of the time when we see a rating on cost, it's lowest to highest, like DOT or other cost basis. And I understand this is not a contract where you're choosing based solely on cost. That's fine. But can we just change the name of that then? Like, just understand that when the council sees things that are graded on cost, it's usually based on the lowest to highest cost, and whether it's based on cost. It's based on a dollar amount. So maybe there's just a better explanation or description, so there's not confusion between. To your point, two numbers that have different costs should never be graded the same, theoretically.
And so many of the other factors are also graded here. I guess I would just wonder if you could come back to us and give us more information about how exactly you assign 55 points to each one of these. Is there any harm in tabling this for us to get that information?
I believe that it's funded with state opioid response funds. No, actually it's not. It's actually, so we're good. No, it's fine.
I don't know move to table. I would like more information about how, it's $150,000 of taxpayer money. I would like more information about how that scores sometimes.
And we'll work with them.
Oh, sure.
We'll work with our team on what we can disclose. My role is to let the team do the scoring and have the contracts leaders oversee that process and not get involved into the nitty-gritty details. And I'm not in the room for that. I'm going to be signing that contract and making sure that we did our due diligence. So I just need to check to see what we're able to provide to you on the scoring for each of those proposals.
And Council Katz is here.
Thank you, Governor. Are there any other contracts that you score this way?
So the majority of contracts we select using a request for proposal process use this criteria, and that's not solely based on the lowest cost bid. So we have requests for bids. That's another solicitation tool that we use, and that is based on the lowest bid. For service contracts like this, we can use request for proposal, so we use this other set of criteria to evaluate the cost per bid.
Can you tell me another contract that we voted for that has come before us like this?
We might have to get back to you on that.
Yeah,
Well, it's going to be tabled, so you'll have an opportunity.
I mean, he's doing a good job.
Motion to table.
Okay, so the motion. Second. All in favor of tabling item 14A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? For that, item is tabled. Other questions concerning any of these other items? Okay, all in favor of items 10 through 14, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Those items are now approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 15 and 16 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Economic Stability?
So moved.
Any discussion? Councilor Kenny? Item 15.
Good to see everyone this morning. So my question is on this contract that involves child care clinics and workforce issues. So we knew last year we had, $30 million in discretionary money left over, I guess, from the federal funding. Is this what we're applying it for? And how is this program going to be implemented?
The $3.6 million award is from Gopher specifically in response to the Child Care Strengthening Plan. There are a number of initiatives being covered with ARPA discretionary funding that are in that overall plan, so it's a larger plan. So this funding is actually targeted to one initiative that is not being covered by ARPA discretionary dollars. That answers your question.
That answers my question. But just to follow up to that, what are we doing with the ARPA discretionary dollars? Because we have this, stress on our child care service across the state, and then ask the question to me, what are we doing with that money?
Sure. It is just under $30 million. We are moving forward with a number of procurements for that funding right now. There are 3 of those procurements have been posted to the website on March 15th. They will close at various times. April 14th is one date. April 21st is another date. So there's the recruitment and retention project, that's one of them. There is a child care business improvement project, that is another. The third one is a Granite Estates for Quality capacity building project. So those are the ones that have been posted so far to date. We do have several others that we're working on now. I expect to be posted sometime in May. So you will see some of these contracts going forward in June and July.
So the 4,000 plus licenses that we have out for child care. So everybody in that community is going to be aware of these initiatives?
Oh, yes. We had quite an extensive stakeholder process in deciding what we were going to pursue for projects with this funding. It was a 6-month, pretty intense review with our stakeholder community who has complete input into identifying what exactly we wanted to spend this money on. So they're very well aware. We continue to talk about the plan. We just posted an update on our website a couple of weeks ago, and we'll continue to update it there. We talk about it at various group meetings with the Child Care Advisory Council as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Stevens.
15, we had over 756 licensed facilities in 21, and dropped to 717 in 22. Where do we stand now? Are we solid in terms of licensed facilities?
So the last number that I have reported was from February of 727 programs that had a capacity of 44,667. So I think the needle is moving slowly in the right direction. And I think what we expect really is that some of these initiatives, as we get going on them, should help in that regard. It may be a few months before we really see some solid progress, but I'm happy to report that back to you as we go.
Well, I appreciate it because it looks like we had dropped to 10, but we've gained 10 from what you're telling me.
Yeah, I think what's happened too is that there are some of the programs that have actually merged, or some that have closed,
have merged with others and therefore reopened. So we haven't necessarily lost as many as it looks on the surface. So it's just shifting. So we hope to continue that progress and support a number of these providers in that regard going forward. So it's slow progress.
Thank you.
Councilor, sorry, one more.
So to Councilor Kenny's question, I had asked for a breakdown of where all of these RFPs were in the process when they're coming to the council, and I was provided all of that. And so I would just say you might want to distribute that to the whole council because it's very good information to be able to track where this $30 million is. My question on number 15 is, how are these funds going to be distributed? Are they going to go to all child care providers, or do they apply for them? Is there a process? What's happening with these?
So some of the funding will be distributed by way of a vendor that is selected from an RFP process. So for example, the Granite State for Quality Capacity Building project, that will be the selection, that's from an RFP, so the selection that we make would be the vendor that would ultimately work with providers and distribute funding to them for us.
These are one-time grants to child care providers?
Yes, and yes.
And will every child care provider receive some or be eligible?
They will have an opportunity to apply for it, yes. So part of that process, of course, is communicating the opportunity to them. And then they would have that opportunity. So for example, one of the projects is the business improvement project. So the vendor that we select for that will end up conducting a bit of a business health assessment with that provider to identify really what is it that they need, and then match them with an expert to strengthen, obtain those positive outcomes for them. That enables them also then to apply for further grant money that would support those particular needs for that individual provider.
Okay. You hit on exactly why I'm asking the question, right? Because I want to make sure that all the providers get notified. So what is the process going to be for notifying providers of the availability of these funds?
That's a great question, and quite an extensive process. So we have several different mediums and methods of communicating with providers, and we use a number of the provider groups to do that. We have regional leads, a whole network of them. We have the Child Care Advisory Council. We have, there's a number of other platforms that meet regularly. We have our Child Care Aware platform that providers do get information off of regularly. And we also have the New Hampshire Connections information system as well.
You mentioned New Hampshire Connections. You opened yourself up.
Right.
So that's used to sign up for background checks, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so there was some slowdown, there was some hiccups, there was access issues. How is that running today?
My understanding that that is running much better. We continue to work on that particular module right now with the vendor that is building that a little further, and I think they've pretty much completed that particular module. So I'd like to say that it's working well. I'd be happy to get you more of an update. As I understand it, the time frame that it takes to process a background check now can be a couple of hours to a couple of days. So it's made some pretty vast improvements.
So if I was to ask Commissioner Boulay to take a look at it and report back, would I get a good report?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I'll put myself out there.
Okay. And just to follow up, Governor, there seems to be a little phenomenon with the child care industry, I'll call it, that home care child care, if you will. Kind of smaller modules of child care in homes. We're seeing more of those licenses coming through. I think some federal monies and some of that as well. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that, and is it something the state can manage?
One of the initiatives with this $29 million of ARPA discretionary funding is a family child care project, which is designed specifically to build capacity and supply, if you will, of a family child care type setting, particularly for infants and toddlers. So that's one of our projects. But we're also aligning that with a project that's ongoing right now with the preschool development grant. So we're hoping that they will inform each other, combine efforts, if you will, and be able to be successful in expanding or starting up new family childcare across the state.
Councilor Warrington.
I just want to say I visited the Hannah Grimes Center in Keene, and there's an exciting model going on there where they're working with the state. What they're doing is taking maybe moms who decided to stay home with their own children and educating them to be home care providers of child care. And they're providing a complete program of how to run a business, the regulatory requirements. They have worked with Keene State College to provide child development education to these providers, and also with the Charitable Foundation to fund physical changes that have to be made in the home in order to be licensed. And they're expecting 60 to 100 child care slots to open up there in the next 2 months. So it's a really interesting program. We should keep an eye on it and see if it can be duplicated in other locations.
I agree. There are definitely some great models out there, and hopefully we will have the workforce to be able to feed that as well. So that, again, some of the initiatives in our discretionary funding would address things like pipelines and where can we help build the workforce even more.
I have another question, Governor. This is on the SNAP program. When I talked to Director Tilley, she said, financial director said you. We do not have have not had a SNAP outreach program. We are actually 39th in the country on SNAP participation. Only half of the citizens of New Hampshire who are eligible to participate in SNAP are participating in SNAP. And their understanding is that there are about 482,000 people eligible to participate in SNAP. My understanding is that the legislature authorized that we and required that we do an outreach program last summer, that the contract was awarded to the food bank in Manchester, and that contract has not yet been executed. Can you advise regarding the status of that contract?
You will see that, I expect, May, first meeting in May. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of items 15 and 16, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 17, 18, and 19 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Children, Youth, and Families?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda item 20 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Medicaid Services?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 20 is approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda item 21 from the Department of Health and Human Services from the
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 21 is approved. Do I have a motion to adopt agenda items 22 and 23 from the Department of Health and Human Services from New Hampshire Hospital?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Warrington. Excuse me.
Commissioner, council members received a letter signed by 17 or 18 social workers over at New Hampshire Hospital, really depicting a pretty dire situation over there with the vacancy rate, with the inability to actually provide services, resulting in people not being discharged on a timely basis, poor morale, and just overall challenges to the workforce, difficulty retaining people, and that the recruitment over there was assigned to Department of Personnel to assist them, and they reported receiving the lowest number of applications received to date compared to all other positions, even when compared to the most competitive positions for nursing, and they have been asking for an enhancement, a pay enhancement. Apparently there was a pay enhancement for the Department of Corrections social workers, but not for New Hampshire Hospital. That, I think, has exacerbated the morale issues wondering if you can, I know you're making efforts to increase the pay through the normal contracting process. I'm wondering if you can address what can be done, first of all, how long is that going to take? And then what can be done to address this concern, this vacancy rate, and this issue right now?
Sure, I mean, this is an issue, we've last couple of years been talking about enhancements, and I think Department of Corrections, I think their enhancement was last year. But it did create an inequity, and part of what we're working with our partners on is to try to right the system or upgrade the system so that those positions going in would be at that rate. So we're trying to resolve this and work through this, not necessarily through the enhancement process, but by the current process and system that we're doing. And I just want to point out in that letter, I don't think discharges are being held up because people aren't getting the enhancement. Does it make it difficult? Yes, but those aren't some of the limiting factors, like not having a place to discharge to. Ellen and her team have done an excellent job of trying to address the discharge challenges, the discharge duties, and things that need to happen so that those can continue. And I've been working with the Department of Admin Services to try, and Division of Personnel, to try to address the pay inequity. And I'm still working on it.
And when do you think that you might be bringing forward some sort of more competitive wage so that we can fill those vacancies?
I can't give you a hard timeline on it right now, but there's a lot of contingencies with that.
Well, I would just urge you that if this is going to be an extended process, that you take a look at whether a wage enhancement similar to what they did at Corrections is appropriate.
We don't anticipate it being an extended process. It's something that we're trying to work with BAS and the team. We're trying to work in conjunction with hopefully the new raises and the contracts that will all go into effect as of July 1. So I think the goal is over the next few months to make sure that it all lines up together at least by July 1st.
But and I certainly appreciate that through the contracting process, we're bringing wages up to the market.
And making the pay scales, adjusting those pay scales, right? It's not just the raise is fine, but also making sure that there's equity across the different positions.
Just to follow up to that, so we have temporary employment agencies that have provided information support. It's a very popular program for college nurses across the country. We want to participate and get extra money. Is there such a program, social workers as well?
Not that we've seen so far, but we can try that again. I think that we tried that several months ago when we did some outreach for increased staffing services at the hospital and didn't have any luck in having an agency that could assist us with social work, but we can try that again.
Further discussion on these items? Okay, all in favor of items 22 and 23, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 24 through 31 from the Department of Health and Human Services to the Division of Public Health Services? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I have a motion to adopt agenda item 31A from the Department of Health and Human Services from the Division of Long-Term Supports and Services?
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Kennedy.
Just one, two, three. So, this for full disclosure to the council, I've been having ongoing dialogue with the DEAS Bureau to talk about this congregate meals contract, which was passed, the council passed back last year in June for a 2-year contract. So I understand in general that the cost of food, electricity, cost of doing business at these meal sites and money meals and meals program has gone up exponentially, and these executive directors are under a lot of pressure. And so I recognize that right up from the get-go. But I'm trying to find out the flexibility of the program itself, because the questions and answers were back and forth. We understand that the congregate meal portion of the contract, that you can transfer up to 40% to the labor, another 10% to transfer to the Meals on Wheels program. We're in the first year of the contract. This is ARPA money. So I have two questions. One is, are we trying to make it flexible and nimble so that these units can be shared across the board throughout the state? So if the site has deficiencies in units in another site, whereas the abundance of units can transfer those units.
So I'm Melissa Hardy, I'm the Director for Long-Term Supports and Services. So to answer your question, I think as we've been trying to work with one of the providers that you've been advocating for, sometimes it comes down to what's in their contract and what area and geography they serve. So one of the concerns that we have is if we're trying to transfer units and their contract says they serve Rockingham County, but the need is in Carroll County, we have to kind of go through a contracts unit to see if that's applicable to transfer. To your other point, as far as the percentage of changing units from congregate to home delivered, we historically have done that 40% change, and we're in the process of submitting a waiver to ACL for the additional 10% to allow flexibility from congregate to home delivered meals.
So is it the flexibility just for the site, or is it for the whole state?
It's for the 40 and the additional 10% is for the whole state, not just the site.
Okay. And so this ARPA infusion of money, is that for the first year contract, or is that also for the second year?
It's for 2 years. So there's, I have the numbers here as far as, it's 85,000 for this year, and then for next year it's 340,000.
So based off the supply and demand and the cost of it, and hearing from the executive directors, we're doing a massive amount of fundraising to try to offset the cost of doing business. It's something that you anticipated last year that inflation would kick in and really create stress for these folks?
Yeah, I think so. One of our prioritized needs for the department was for meals and transportation under Title 20. So we did request, I think, $3.8 million in additional funding for a prioritized need, knowing that we're an aging state, knowing that the cost of food is going up, the cost of gas to deliver Meals on Wheels is going up as well.
Yeah, because what I'm sensing with this program, the Congregate Meal Program, is kind of slid back, and the grab the meals and go is increased in popularity. So Congregate Meals is slid back. The Meals on Wheels program has gone up. So the demand overall has gone up on these meal sites, because if there's questions about food security, then people are going to go, if they're a senior, they're going to go to the meal site to look for help and support. So I'm just hoping maybe it's going to help me to bring up this topic with breakfast meeting, but this has been the gold standard across the nation, our senior meals program in New Hampshire, and right now they're feeling pressure. So we just want to try to address the issue and see how we might be able to help out. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of item 31A, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item is approved. Thanks. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 32 through 51A from the Department of Transportation? There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Gatsby. I like when you put your hand up and you just put up 4 fingers.
Yes, we have a couple of right-of-way items for contemplated awards, and we continue dealing with property owners that we're displacing. So those are a couple of items on there. And the broader scope that I reported last time, and the construction work continues, and the project is moving forward and on schedule.
The Lime Bridge, can we update on that? Is it closed yet?
It's not closed yet. They are still doing some of the paint testing, the lead paint testing. There was anticipation that it was going to be, that they were going to actually start the demolition work. It was told early in April. There was some characterization of the material that is ongoing. But we are, and I know we talked, we do have, we have in the works a public outreach campaign to let the butters and the people in the vicinity of the schedule and of the ongoing activities throughout the construction project.
What is it? The line bridge?
You have no idea how much we talk about this bridge down there?
Is this one on the line?
There's a bridge between
Yeah.
line and that's
Yeah,
from one
okay. I just wanna
that
make
needs to
sure-
be closed to the
And the
rehabilitation.
traffic goes around, I just want to make sure I'm on the right page.
Yes,
Great.
that's the bridge you want to name that. They awarded the contract last fall, and, beginning the work is going to be starting up this spring. Okay. Want to do some public outreach to make sure everybody's aware of the schedule and what's going on with the work.
I'll wait till the hands get free.
Controversial.
Another meeting to do.
Number 43. So, we're still trying to sell our properties around Conway, around the proposal of bypass. So we saw 3/4 of the acres on East New Road. How are we proceeding? Have we advanced some miles of Arkansas to this point, or how much have we got left?
I do have an inventory. My supposition, and I'll have to check and get back to it, would probably address about 30 to 40% of the properties, and we had, as you know, we had concentrated on the larger properties and the more marketable standalone properties. So come to the end of some of those in the next round of property dispositions, looking at smaller pieces that can be aggregated into a more marketable sale. So I can get you more specific. I didn't check before it came, but we have an inventory and we're checking them off as we go.
So my more difficult question is, does this go back to the federal government as far as any sale of property along the bypass? Is that part of the village of general?
It actually comes back to the department. We had to, because the Conway project was never built, we had to pay the federal government back around $29 million for the right-of-way that we had acquired. So the sale of these properties now is to recoup the state, the state for that money that we paid back to the federal government. So indirectly, it has gone back to the federal government because the project was never built, and we had to pay them back for essentially the right-of-way that we acquired. But the immediate sales are coming back to us to offset that payback to the feds.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Stevens?
Item 51, the traffic database management system. So with auto calling, we can get real-time traffic information at intersections, 75 intersections throughout the state. Is that correct? I'll have to check. It's closer to real time. Right now, we go out, monthly or quarterly and pull the data card out of those things or plug in and download it and stuff. So it will be much more timely. I don't know if it's specifically real time. There is still a download component, but it's certainly going to be a lot more efficient and safer. So as a follow-up, this was the traffic on 125 was last updated on 22. So this is going to at least elevate or accelerate results.
Yes, very much so, right.
And I want to thank you and Commissioner Quinn for taking the time on a Thursday night to come out to Brentwood and meet with several hundred constituents over their concerns for 125. It's the fourth most dangerous roadway in the state, 1,600 crashes, and the response from my constituents, they're so grateful. And state police began deployed. We have a collaboration, I think, with 7 municipalities. But you heard the testimony.
Yes.
The deaths, motorcycle deaths, and life-altering injuries. So I just want to thank you both for being there.
I would say, I mean, Department of Safety and the Highway Safety Office, they really stepped up. I was following up from that meeting. They've done a lot of outreach, and I've seen the emails about the elevated patrols, and they'll be getting some message boards out there from HSCM and others, so that, they've done a really good job.
I'll give the credit to Lieutenant Walker at Troop A. He was quite responsive to had his team out there.
I mean, the comments in social media, you heard the testimony, families are frightened when their children get onto school buses. So again, thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of items 32 through 51A from DOT, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those are all approved. Thank you, Commissioner. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 52 through 54 from the Department of Information Technology?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions on any of these three items from DOIT? Councilor Warrington. Commissioner here somewhere? Oh, good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning. Still morning by a couple minutes.
Still morning, still Commissioner.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good morning, folks. Dennis Goulet, Commissioner of the Department of Information Technology.
First of all, congratulations, Commissioner, on your reappointment, and thank you for your continued service to our state. I have a question on item 52. This is for the existing, there's a system at Hampstead that was not compliant with privacy and security requirements. And this indicates that, for that reason, the transition was made in the past tense, and the implementation brought Hampstead into compliance. This is just the accept and expend. Did we already see the contract?
Well, this was because the timing we didn't have these operating funds in this budget year, so we're accepting it's just so to deal with this budget year. Future budget years are covered in the proposed budget.
So did we actually approve the contract?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to recall that we had done that. And then on 54, there's a change to the price cap, but in your amendment, you make no change to the scope of services, only indicate that services will be provided with change orders. So what is going to be done with these change orders?
I'll ask my friend from the Department of Labor to join us. Please.
Councilors, Ken Merrick from the Department of Labor. We specifically asked for sweep ARPA funds for an expansion of this existing project. So the components of that involve a seamless interface with the state's accounting system, New Hampshire First, from our accounting system within the Department of Labor's new system. In addition to that, we're expanding the availability of what I call image forms, a way for customers outside the department to enter the system through our website and interact with the department through that function. And then the final component is a training module that will be used by both the public and by Department of Labor employees. So that's the scope. We requested funds specifically to expand this project, and that's what this amendment is funded through.
But typically when we see an amendment, there's an increase in the scope of the project, then Exhibit B of the contract will be amended to detail the additional scope of the project. And in that case, this case, that wasn't done. It just says that you're going to issue change orders, I guess, as you decide what needs to happen. So I just wanted to check on that. It's just a little bit unusual from what we normally see.
And I remember you're asking about that with the last amendment, so I did suggest that, but this is the product that the contracts brought us. Again, if it's any comfort, the grant specifically identifies those three components of this expansion.
Okay, thank you.
So treasury reporting would have to cover that, so.
Councilor Stevens?
Commissioner, item 53, you and I have discussed this issue. My concern is 890 documents to be converted to ADA compliance, but the rate of $150 per hour when we know it's going to take 45 minutes per document. So that's over 637 hours. So I reached out to others. We could get it somewhere between $12 to $55 an hour. This is our $600 hammer as far as I'm concerned. This is so elevated. My other concern is embedding one of their staffers 40 hours a week. It seems rather vague, their responsibilities. And it's over 2,000 hours that has been budgeted. And then website hosting, we assume responsibility for those.
Program. We had shared our concerns about what that uptake might look like. This is an income demographic that typically doesn't qualify for assistance. So getting them into a new program when they're not used to applying for assistance can be difficult. We advertise, we work with the fuel vendors, we work with CAPS, and we would have liked to see more people apply and be part of that program, but we've not seen that. So the numbers have been low for that program. LIHEAP, on the other hand, we are up to 4,000 households for this time last year certified. So around 27,000 households have been served. We're burning through that money. And so LIHEAP funds are going out the door. There are still folks in the pipeline to be certified. They have till April 30th to apply. And it's a rolling program, rolling open admissions for that program. So we're feeling good about LIHEAP. The community action agencies are handling a lot. They're doing a great job. They're paying the folks overtime, weekends, to make sure that folks are certified for the program and you can get their benefits. And occasionally, yes, someone may be in the process of applying and it takes longer than expected due to a number of factors, right? They may not have completed their application correctly. There may be something that the CAP is waiting on to certify that household. So every situation is different, but I can assure you that the department and the CAPS have been doing their very best to make sure that these benefits are getting out the door and helping the Hampshire folks.
Is it true that the applications had to be made on paper, or could people apply online?
It is a paper process. The application can be downloaded, but it is a process. We have to verify. We have to look at their income tax records. We need their social security numbers, copies of those numbers. There's a whole list of items that go into verifying their income, so that the program is, we're protecting against state potential fraud and the integrity program protected. So yes, it's a process that everyone has to go through in order to receive the funds.
So here it is, April, right? The major part of the heating season is passed at this point. It seems to me that at some point during this process in the winter, you could have sounded the alarm that this program wasn't going very well. I mean, it's one thing if maybe half of the people that you expect subscribe. It's another thing if 1.5%. I mean, this is really essentially a program that's completely fake. So why didn't you come back to the council? Why have you been sounding the alarm about the lack of uptake in this program?
Well, if I may, it was prescribed by the legislature. The legislature came up with a different idea, and it was a terrible idea. And so we kept advertising, we kept pushing. I mean, the alarm was being sounded, but we were so prescribed by the legislature, we were stuck. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, Councilman. We were really stuck within a bad idea and a bad program.
We had to essentially stand up a new assistance program based on income verification, had to mirror LIHEAP. And that program was created by the legislature in mid-September of 22. We had contracts for the new programs on the council agenda for the first meeting in October. I mean, we moved as quickly as we possibly could. We advertised social media, radio, we met with the fuel vendors, the utilities, we're close with the utilities, they've been advertising on their website and their bill inserts. I mean, everything that we could do to get the word out, we've been doing. This is the group, that income demographic, between 60 and 75% of state median income, don't qualify for those programs. They're not used to We tried to get the word out the best we could, but in a very short time frame, they expanded the program.
So the field, I would say this too, just some of the feedback I got, without naming any specifics, the field vendors would talk, because it was in their interest to get their customers online. And the field vendors would talk to all their customers one-on-one, and their feedback was, we just don't want to do it. Because even though customers were like, no, you can have this money, and they're like, nope, we don't want to do it. I was shocked at how much feedback we got where people were aware that they could apply, they either didn't, they just didn't want the assistance for whatever reason.
In working with the CAPS, a positive part of this whole process was that by getting the word out about this new program, we've seen 7,000 additional applications come in this year. And anecdotally, talking with CAP directors, a number of folks that came in thought, hey, I didn't know I qualified for LIHEAP. They came in, wanted to qualify for the $450 new state benefit, and qualified for LIHEAP. So we actually increased our LIHEAP numbers for this year. And we're up 4,000 households compared to this time last year.
It does seem that we could have had an easier application process and automated application process. The paper process is obviously.
If we had if we had more time to stand up a program, absolutely, but we had no time. It was authorized mid-September, and we had to get this program up and running, and the best and easiest and most efficient way to do that was to mirror the LIHEAP program.
Just to get the website set up would have been 6 months.
We moved as quickly as we could.
Can I also ask you about the low-income household water assistance program and what the status? I understand that the application deadline for that is the end of the month. What are we doing to get that word out about the availability of that program?
I'm going to have Josh Elliott come up, who is the director of the division that handles that program. We've had some recent developments on that. So,
good afternoon, Governor, councilors. Yes, so it is the funds for ARPA that we've got for that program are required to be returned to the federal government until the end of September. So we do have some time. We are working with community action agencies, again, to stand up this program. I should say, to get the word out more about this program. Obviously, as you've heard from the commissioner, there's been a lot of, we've seen a large volume of applications coming in for LIHEAP that they're working on processing through. We've been having discussions with the New Hampshire Waterworks Association about looking at their residential customers who have arrearages, putting in bill inserts into those bills as they go out, telling folks, hey, you can go to your community action agency if you have an arrearage, they can pay it off for you. So we're working through that process, so we hope to have that well underway with bill inserts going in June and July to make sure that these funds go out before they expire.
Well, since the press is here covering this, here's a chance to get the word out. Can you at least tell us what the program, who qualifies for this program?
Yes, so it's anyone under 60% of state median income, and if they have an arrearage on their water system. So if you're, I'm not going to name specific names of water companies, but any community water system where you get a bill for a water bill, and again, you're below 60% of state median income, so if you're currently on LIHEAP or any of the other assistance programs, you're eligible to have your arrearage forgiven, subject to the availability of funds.
Is that also a paper application process?
Yes.
So if someone owns their own well, they're out of one.
Correct. And we've paid so far, I want to say several hundred invoices for water arrearages.
Councilor Steven?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. Councilor Getz?
Thank you, Governor. 1.5%, how many people is that?
We have paid roughly, I would say about 950 households have received a heating credit and roughly 650 an electric credit.
And how much money was in that fund?
They appropriated $35 million.
And the 1.5% that's been spent, how much is that?
It's about 500,000, just above 6.
And the money's got to be returned by this coming September?
End of the fiscal year. So June 30, it lapses back to the general fund.
It was just general funds, I think, surplus funds.
Well, maybe we can move those and put them somewhere that we can allocate for next year. Because gas and oil prices are going up.
Well, the legislature, I guess, could do that through this current budget, right? They could put aside some money they're willing to do. But again, not do the same program again. Okay, further discussion for the Department of Energy. Okay, seeing none, all in favor of items number 65 through 73, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. Allow us for motion to adopt agenda item 74 from the Banking Department.
So moved.
It's a motion, a second. Any discussion on item 74? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 74 is approved. Allow us for motion to adopt agenda items 75 and 76 from the Governor's Office for Emergency Relief and Recovery.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion on either of these two items? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No on 76.
No on 76. Thank you. That items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 77 through 80B from the Department of Business and Economic Affairs?
So moved.
Any discussion? For BEA? Yeah? Is that it? Oh, yeah, Councilor Kenny, sorry. I missed that.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Just wondering where we are on the interactive map for broadband. Is it up on the website yet? Can you go in and punch in your own address?
We do have the map available at this point. It is a work in progress. So what we did was we got the actual format of the map available online, and as we go through the process of awarding these contracts and as we see more locations come online, they will be reflected in that activity. So our partner on that is UNH, and they continue to enhance the accuracy of that map on a daily basis, working with towns, working with communities, working with providers to get us where we need to be.
How many unserved locations do you have?
Total unserved locations, I don't have that number right now.
It should be in the map, right?
I can check the map and see if I can pull that number from there. But again, so for example, part of what we use is the FCC map that came out a couple of months ago as a basis. But what we have done is we are overlaying the E911 address data that the state has. And for example, in Coles County, there are 1,000 additional addresses on our map that are actually on the FCC map. So we're getting it into a structure where we have a much more accurate representation of where locations are, and then whether those are unserved or underserved is also part of that process. So it is something that takes a little bit of time because we get information from the providers, but we also are back checking that with actual on-the-ground accessibility, but also with the communities and the municipal broadband groups that are around the state.
Further discussion? Councilor Kenny.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Page A, the agenda, this is the Invest New Hampshire Housing Program. So this particular kind of a subset of the overall $100 million is a municipal per unit contract, which is $10,000 per unit. We're using $1.37 million. How much are we going to have left over for other?
That program is initially held at $30 million. So we have a ways to go with that. And I would say, remember that this program was launched in late July or early August, and it has a 6-month permitting. So we saw some of the first permits of that start to show up around January. So here we are with our first tranche of funds that are coming through the pipeline under that program for your consideration. We will continue to see that churn over the next several months. I would say that in the pipeline right now, we have probably around $10 million worth of applications that are going through the process of eligibility back and forth between our staff and municipalities.
Is there an expiration date for this particular funding piece?
So all of the programs that are funded under ARPA have a requirement that we obligate by the end of 2024. And then we have until 2026 to make sure they're spent.
So one of the questions with this particular project has been, it has to be affordable interest rate. And is it a 5-year period that has to be affordable before it's reduced?
So in each of the programs, there is an affordability restriction component to the funds. So if the locality permits units in a given project that have the affordability restriction components that were in the original capital grant program, so the 80% and under available to the area median income, those are the eligible units that they can apply for.
Any difficulties with that at this point? There's some, everyone's...
We've had a couple of communities that may be misinterpreting their requirements as to what they have to do to enforce that, which is nothing. And so we've had conversations with some communities that the enforcement component is not on this now. There's a fee restriction.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Councilor Gaffney?
Commissioner, just wondering how you're doing with the...
Yes, I'm just talking to
Education.
Commissioner a little bit about that. So Education did send us something over on Monday, so we didn't have time to get it in front of you today. So it's very much in process and it's moving for a very close future council.
I hope it's done before school.
Yes, that is very much on our minds.
Councilor Stevens?
ADB demolition, we started with 5 million, so we roughly have about 4.3 million left.
Yeah, but we have a lot in that pipeline too, so that's a popular program.
Just about, yeah, no, folks in my district, municipal leaders are very excited about it.
Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of items 77 through 80B, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda item 81, the New Hampshire Basic Game Department? Any discussion?
Just...
Councilor Kenny?
Just a PSA, but...
Oh, PSA.
I believe this event is happening at Michigan Game Headquarters from 9 to 3 this Saturday.
Oh, it's the event. Oh, yeah. Is that right? I think it's this weekend. Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday.
Well, Director, how are you? We were just discussing whether you were going to have a big event this Saturday. Is that
Saturday in Wild Hampshire.
Wild New Hampshire? What time?
I believe it starts at 10.
10? I think it's 10.
I think so.
That's a very fun event.
Yes, it is. I believe it's the largest free event for a number of people showing up. It's a lot of fun. My staff told me.
I never can figure out how they keep the falcons from eating all the snakes. But somehow they keep away from each other. Yeah. That's a great thing. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, all in favor of item 81, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 81 is approved. Allow us for motion to adopt agenda item 81A to 90A from the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. So moved. Any discussion? The Commissioner's jumping up as if he has something to say. Do you have a PSA too, Commissioner?
I do.
You sounding? How can I tell? I can feel it.
Welcome to wildfire season. I don't think Walmart has a line of greeting cards yet for this season, but maybe we'll add that to our revenue stream. The East Side Proclamation next week is Wildfire Prevention Week, and I think it's sometimes counterintuitive to think of spring showers and wildfire, but everything was dry, so no fires.
What does that mean?
Don't start fires up.
You know, but it's not like our campsites or something like that. We don't
You have to get a
programs.
fire permit.
Right.
Yes, it's not, so, and also look at your local fire departments, they will put a flag out for extreme weather.
Is Smokey retired?
No, he's still.
He was at the Easter egg hunt on Saturday. Everybody smiles. So he's very busy. Councilor Stevens?
Agenda item 82, which we discussed, in regards to the John Alvin Stone Trust. Do you ever get an answer whether those funds could be used outside of the urban forestry sector? Charitable Trust is looking at the language.
So I have our state forester here, Patrick Hackley, who can add a little bit to this, but the short answer is we're confident that the intention of the funds falls within the mission of the fund. But if you wanted more information, it would be okay to table it at this point, and we could provide additional backup information for that.
Has this trust been used for outside purposes in the past?
Educational events associated with Urban Forestry Center have been used, funds have been used off-site, but with permission from the trustees and the trust fund manager.
And in this situation, we do have approval from TD Bank and others?
We do. And I have some documentation if you'd like.
Oh, no, thank you for clarifying. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of items 81A through 90A, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those ones are approved. Thank you, guys. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 91 through 105 from the Department of Environmental Services? Any discussion? Councilor Kenny? We weren't going to make the commissioner sit here for 4 hours for nothing.
So 104, this authorizes grant to the Sawyer Village District, and it's a lot of money to rehabilitate the village dam. So is this a state dam, or is this a private dam? What kind of dam is this?
Thank you for the question again, Bob Scott, with Department of Environmental Services. So this is part of, again, the governor and the legislature has been very generous. We have $185 million in ARPA funds. I sent you the monthly report. So this is part of that. So this is municipal loan. This program is for out of ARPA funds that where this is from. Is for municipally owned dams that are high hazard in either poor or unsatisfactory condition based on those factors. So it's a select group. The short answer is we do not own the dam, but obviously we'd like to see it fixed. So that's
It's a town dam that the state is money towards.
Correct.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
So Governor, I do have a PSA of sorry for being out of order. I wanted to point out Randy Pelletier, Director Pelletier, tomorrow will be 50 years of state service.
So what does he get? More than the governor's pencil that the kids get or something. We gotta try and find something. And you still have a decent lot of your hair. Yeah. That's amazing. All right. Were there further questions for DPS? Okay. All in favor of item, 91A through 105, please signify by saying, 91 through 105, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those items are approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 106 through 113 for the Department of Education?
So moved.
Any discussion? For the Department of Education? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Cooking now. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda item 114 from the New Hampshire Lottery Commission? Any discussion for our friends at Lottery? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 114 is approved. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 115 through 135 from the Department of Safety?
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. Good to see Commissioner. Could I get a motion to adopt agenda items 136 through 138 from the Department of Justice?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on these items? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items are approved. And finally, can I get a motion to adopt agenda items 139 through 157 from the Department of Administrative Services, although please note that item 155 is not used.
Second.
Any discussion for our friends at DAS? Councilor Warrington.
Good afternoon, Cassie Keene, Deputy Commissioner of DAS.
And I am Sherry Rockrum, Assistant Commissioner for the department.
Thank you both. And my question is around item number 143. And we've had some discussion about this. And I've had some input, I think other councilors have as well, about this item, that by entering into this agreement for $3 million, that we are also sort of launching ourselves in more to doing a contract with this company Infor for the more overall $31 million purchase that's coming. And my understanding, speaking with you yesterday, is that that contract is coming forth on May 3rd. And that is a $31 million contract that we've been with the same provider for 20 years, close to that. And if we are not putting that up to bid. My understanding in speaking with you is the assumption is that it will cost us more money to go out to bid. My feeling about that is we don't know that until we go out to bid. So I guess I would wonder if you could comment on that.
So I'll start, and I want to note that Commissioner Goulet, the newly approved Commissioner of DOIT, is here with us also. I'll start by talking about the Infor contract, and then I'll go back to this very contract that's on the agenda today. We have been working for more than a year at DAS at a management level to determine the future of the Hampshire First, which is our enterprise resource planning system. It does everything financial, personnel related. It pays our bills, it's financial reporting, it does HR, it does benefits, it does payroll, it does everything. We first implemented the system back in 2007. Governor, it's your favorite system, and you might remember the name Lawson. And what ended up happening is...
It's definitely not my favorite.
I'm sorry, I just my Lawson was bought out by Infor, okay? And so we've been working with Infor since that time. This is a system that is aging out, and it is very costly and human resource dense to maintain. So the question is, what do we do with this system? What's our next step? And so we reached out to Dennis and his team, and we worked collaboratively with them to discuss, do we continue to work with Infor and move what is today our on-premise system to a cloud environment where we can purchase software as a service and have regular updates? Is that the way we should go? Is that the most cost-effective? Is that the most, I think, that in the best interest of the state strategy in terms of how do we move forward with the ERP system? And our determination in multiple meetings was that it is going to cost us approximately $31 million to take the on-premise system and move it to the cloud. And were we to go out to bid and have a new vendor, that we believe it would be a minimum of approximately $75 million to begin a from-scratch system, that we would have a major development effort calling on not just CAS resources, but DOIT resources and staff resources from all the agencies to have to build a system from the ground up. So for this reason, we have been working with Infor on a sole source contract that we intend to bring forward in May. I'm sorry, not necessarily May 4th, okay? We are going to recommend that we move forward with a sole source effort to move the on-premise system to the cloud. This contract is related to our work with Infor. We have been working with Infor and Axiom, who is the company that is part of the contract that is subject to this agenda item, for maybe 2 years now, I think it is. And we are implementing a system called Workforce Management, which is a timekeeping and scheduling software in the agencies. We started with the two most difficult agencies. They are the Department of Corrections and the Department of Safety. And the reason they're difficult is they're complex. They have complex collective bargaining agreements, and they also have complex schedules. They work 24/7, right? And so part of this came out of a multi-year discussion with the legislature about getting a handle on overtime spending. How do we have a tool that helps us with scheduling, that helps us pay workers for the shifts that they are working and sort of not allowing bleeding on either end, and so hence reducing some overtime costs. And so Workforce Management helped us as the implementer of WFM in the Department of Corrections and in the Department of Safety. This contract would require Axiom to continue to work on implementation of workforce management, timekeeping, and scheduling in the remainder of the agencies. And it is a sole source contract, and the reason we're recommending that is because they have experience. They know our system. They know our environment. They know our collective bargaining environment. They know how we have to establish rules that comport with our collective bargaining agreements. And they've worked really well with us. They are a company that focuses on workforce management and only workforce management. It is their specialty. They are experts in the field. And so, to your point, Counselor, yes, it does require them to work with Infor, and we will be bringing the Infor contract forward in May. I personally don't believe that it sets it up for Infor. I think that is an independent decision, and as we discussed, if indeed Infor is not ultimately our vendor for bringing their system into the cloud, then we would modify and bring forward a request to amend the Axiom contract to make clear that Axiom would work with whatever vendor we do end up working with to move to the cloud.
The only other thing I'll add to what Kathy had mentioned in terms of pricing. So the $75 that she referenced, the one reference of that, we've been $75 million, that we talked about, is that the state of Idaho recently did a procurement. It started a few years ago, and their legislature, after approved just north of $100 million for their project. So it's a very similar state. We look to them a lot in terms of our financial systems, because they're similar size to us. So just to give you a comparison, well, you don't know for certain until you go out to bid. That's a very similar state that is currently going through the process right now.
And if I could give an IT perspective on why I think it's reasonable to go forward with Infor as we're proposing. And I have to step back a little bit. When you have a system,
Many times in my career, we've had, running a system successfully, and the vendor comes to us and saying, hey, we're doing something new. So Infor, like many other software companies, is moving away from the on-prem traditional licensing model to that cloud-based subscription model. So the ongoing efforts they're putting into their product are in the cloud, not in the existing on-premise versions that we're running. Every time that happens, sometimes it's, oh, look, we got this new shiny thing that, it's our new product, and we want you to go to it. And sometimes it's really different. And if it's really different, then you're like, well, that's going to be just as hard to implement and just as costly as if I were to do a new system. And at that moment, you say, yes, let's re-procure, because I'm going to eat that cost anyway. I'm going to absorb that cost of re-implementation. In the case of Infor, that's much reduced because it's like for like. Things are very similar. The root system that we'd be going to in the cloud suite is very, very similar from a data perspective and a function perspective. So training of staff, moving of data, all of that stuff is much, much easier. So that the cost, the big bubble that we would have in a full-on implementation is much reduced by that. And so I feel, could another new system coming in be cheaper? Maybe, but it'd be the first time I've ever seen that happen in my career. It's very, the hard part is getting, not from one to another that's not like for like. So I thought it was reasonable. Is there one that is better out there? Potentially. But we're very successfully running, in one of the very few states that's running all branches of government on the same ERP system successfully. I know my peers around the country are struggling with implementations now, because we were so far ahead of the rest of the country in doing this. So, whatever the decision of the council is, we'll obviously support it. But I think it's reasonable for the way to support it.
So the Infor contract isn't before us today, but so I guess I would ask you, Commissioner Goulet, do you agree that if we approve this contract today, that this does not lock us in to using Infor?
Yeah, we spoke about that last night, actually, and I think that what we'd have to do is shift gears, right? If we say, we'd have to think about, if we say, all right, we're really going to do a procurement and we're not sure who we're going to end up with, then I think we would have to talk about what our implementation details were and perhaps put a hold on what we're doing. I think it would cause that change.
Yeah, I was thinking some more about this last evening after we spoke, and I think one of the advantages of approving the contract, if that's where you're going to go, is that we can get to work with the agencies. There's a lot of work we have to do with the agencies to talk about what about their environments, their CBAs, do they have any special rules, and that work will be done by Axiom. So I just want to make that point.
So if we approve this contract, could you put out an RFI, even if you didn't put out an entire RFP, and put out an RFI and see if you get feedback about what other products are out there, what other prices? I understand that when you work with somebody for a long time, you get comfortable with them, but that's just the sort of thing that always perpetuates sole source contracts, right, and people not going out to bid. And it seems to me that at a minimum, you could issue an RFI. For the product that Infor is now providing.
I'm going to just turn to Dennis and just transparency. What are your thoughts about RFI versus RFP? Because my kind of feeling is they're both a tremendous amount of work to do, and I would prefer to probably do an RFP. I don't know if that's where you would go.
I think if we were going there, it would probably be the way to go. And there's complexity too. In the days when we purchased what we have today, the systems were monolithic. Generally you get a new system and it has, the services, the implementation services would come with the same vendor. Now the environment is much more complex, so it's actually it would be a pretty complex procurement.
I was going to add is one other thing I just want to point out at the time. So as we said, to do an RFI, you're looking at a similar time frame. Obviously, anything that we get for an RFI is not binding in terms of costs.
So you have to decide, do you then, choose something that's not through an RFP process based on an RFI number that's not a binding contract or a binding cost. The other thing that we're working up against is our current Infor platform will no longer be supported after March of, I think 2026, I believe, March of 26 or 25, 26, March of 26. Our current platform won't be supported. So that's the other thing that we're tying, why that seems like a long time in terms of a system implementation. That's a really tight time frame to do, especially if you are a completely new vendor that you're trying to work with. So that's the other reason, one of the other reasons that we were looking to go this route was knowing that our time period was also very limited.
So with respect to the Infor contract, I think we have time after this meeting to talk about how each council, or I guess to talk to you about how they would want you to proceed. And I'll certainly reach out to talk to you about that. I think I need to share what you about this contract.
Further discussion on these? Councilor Gatsas?
Thank you, Governor. We know that one of the vendors, the vendor that we have now, is 35 million supported.
Yes.
And you said the next closest vendor might be 100.
In our meetings where we were discussing options, we thought it would be a minimum of 75 million.
Well, the worst that could happen is it goes to an RFP, and the current vendor bids the 35 million, and somebody bids higher.
Or they bid higher, Councilor. That is another possibility.
Well, that's a tough one because, they're showing their hand and we're not biting it. I mean, if they say they can do it for 35, then why are they going to come back to us and say it's going to be 55?
It's 31. We keep doing
Or 31. You know how things move around here. I mean, I don't understand why we would do this contract and not go out for an RFP when we know where somebody's bottom line is, and we just, if I take a look at the items on your agenda, there's an awful lot of sole sources on there.
And that's a different issue, and you're not going to hear an argument from us, but I think that that's something we're working to clean up the backlog of contracts that we need to be bringing forward because of the commodity change, and we agree, we need to
It
fix
shouldn't be
it.
you supporting it, Charlie should be standing there.
Charlie has a family issue.
So, Governor, when we deal with IT, there's a tendency to hang on to what we have and we don't want to change it. For instance, Microsoft had created an operating system that for many years was the only thing you could use as far as an operating system for competition with everything so far ahead of the competition. But when it comes to IT, it seems like the state government wants to fall back on the previous vendor and therefore it's associates vendor again. How do we break through that to say, let's make it a very competitive process?
I think I want to step back, if you don't mind, Counselor, and talk about DAS and our values when it comes to purchasing, and then I'm going to direct the IT question to Dennis. I think that we are very dedicated and committed to procuring in general, and that we don't make decisions to extend contracts. I come out of the Division of Risk and Benefits where we do the health benefit plan, and you all know this for years and years and years. We go out to bid on contracts that like Anthem, the Anthem contract, like our pharmacy contracts, and we have changed vendors. And that what I'm saying about that is that's a cultural issue in our agency, and that is what we deliberated as we tried to strategize for over a year, what direction do we take this in. And it was our internal decision, working with DOIT, that we thought this was the best strategy in the best financial interest of the state. Dennis, I think if you could help out with the discussion about IT systems, that would be...
Sure. I mean, the wise way to run IT systems is not to try to switch them out too often, because it's really expensive.
How often is that?
I would say that a short life would be 10 years.
And how long has this one been in?
Since 2007.
Sounds like it's due for a change.
Further discussion? I mean, look, I guess, why don't we do this? This is obviously, why don't, at the next breakfast meeting, you guys come with something that really outlines, because you've been looking at this for years, all the different things you've looked at, all the different options you've considered, the information that you've gathered. I understand that a new RFP process is going to put a massive time, I mean, the RFP itself would be incredibly complicated. When would that even potentially come? 6, 9 months?
I think, I'm going to say 9 months minimum, it's a lot of work. And we talked about, we'd have to figure out how to structure it even. So to do it justice, I think it's a minimum of 9 months.
It might be multiple procurements too, because when we did a full implementation last time, we had to get ID&B and the incumbent. I think what we'll be looking at this time will be ID&B, the provider of software, and also the provider of implementation systems.
I'm just going to ask you for what he's saying to me. What's that? Okay. I'm sorry, that was Director Alex Stone. He's our Director of the Division of Enterprise Asset Management.
Application Management.
Application Management, I'm sorry. What Alex was just saying, it's $15 million for the
Implementation.
and then the balance of that is for the ongoing licensing.
Over 10 years.
Yeah, over 10 years. So his point is that it's $15 million to move our current ERP to the cloud versus going out to bid, and again, going back to that $75 million.
Okay, why don't you guys come with a full discussion next week?
All right.
This is a really big decision. The council has some clear hesitation. And again, so if you want to go sole source, you really have to be able to, I think, back up more than this 10-minute conversation. Any additional data or information that you can provide to the council to help get, so that they can make a more informed decision.
And we're happy to, and we look for your guidance.
You need a motion to table 143?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's another question. So, yeah. So well, I don't need it, but if you need it, I don't want to table it at all. I think we need to go forward because the system is.
Again, but are there implications to tabling 143?
No.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to table item 143. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor of tabling item 143, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that item is, any opposed? That item is tabled. Any other discussion for GAS? Okay. All in favor of items 139 through 157, with the exception of items 155, which is not used, and 143?
We've got more discussion on these.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's what I was asking, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, great. What other items? Yep. Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
Item 152. We have to.
Yes.
Yeah. Cleared up. I'm just kind of perplexed about the process here. How we came from one person having the low bid, and then we put it out to bid, and the losing bidder dropped their price by 40%. Once they knew the bid of the first round of bidding. I'm not sure that the process is fair here.
So I will describe what occurred, and there were process issues, and I think I said to Councilor Warmington yesterday when she asked me about this, this is an unfortunate fact pattern. So you may remember back in December, I think it was at the meeting on the 21st, a contract came forward with a long-standing contractor called RPF. and it was for this very service. And at the time, the council asked Charlie a number of questions. He was looking at the document, the contract document, and the font on the document was so tiny that I think he said, let's table this item and I'll go back and get information. We went back, he came back to the office, we worked with the Division of Procurement Services, and that resulted in sort of a deep dive into what happened with this contract. And at that time, what was discovered was that the second bidder that at the time we brought forward the first contract was determined to be non-compliant. And in truth, that ended up being an error because what had happened was that bidder, who is in fact this contract we're bringing forward, had asked as part of a procurement process a series of questions. And they were on the last day of the question period in the afternoon, and our Division of Procurement missed that those questions had been submitted. So when we didn't answer the questions, and the bidder, who was SLR, submitted their bid but left the questions blank where they had asked us questions. So we understood that there was an error in the whole procurement process, and so what we did was we canceled the bid. We went back out to bid, changed a couple of the specs, and the two bidders, same bidders, bid again. One was the long-term incumbent, and the other was SLR. We did change some of the specs. In the second bid on for this service, SLR came in, I think, $84,000 lower than the first bidder, than the first contractor, RPF. So RPF is understandably very upset. They say that they were disadvantaged because their bid in the first contract that we brought forward made public their price. And we have talked to them, and we have said that both bidders' numbers were posted first time around so that they could have also looked at SLR's numbers too. So I don't really think there was an unfair advantage, Counselor. I think it's like what could go wrong with.
So, is there any possibility, it sounds like part of this, it's our state made a mistake in the first instance, in the not acknowledging that some information maybe wasn't missing, or caused them to, people to think it wasn't missing. And so is there any solution we can make out of this here with not approving this contract and maybe putting out two smaller contracts for this type of service? So that we could correct the unfairness that happened.
It would be an unorthodox way to address the issue. I think that SLR could challenge us legally to say that they won the bid fair and square. Could we cancel this bid and go out with two smaller opportunities, maybe? I'd love to find a way to...
So what if we get you out the hook and we wrote this contract down, and then you put it back out the bid?
And then what I predict will happen is the same two bidders will bid and SLR will win.
Well, we kind of did that.
But it was like, the watermelon, this one piece of it, so
It might make more sense if there's times perhaps we could take, I'm not directly familiar with this issue, but based on what I'm hearing, it might be good for us to have a conversation about what the options could be. If there's time, maybe that's just table as consultant.
Is there time, Gary?
We have, excuse me, Gary, we have several projects, several engagements that are in the queue that are being impacted by this brief. This goes back to December 21st's agenda, where we had the incumbent position, and so really time is of the essence.
I would stand that it's a retroactive contract already, so it's going to be a retroactive contract when it comes back to us.
So, yeah, and I think that was Gary Lunetta, by the way. He's our Director of the Division of Procurement and Support Services. And I just think it's important to say that the contract is for asbestos remediation. I think, okay.
I was just going to say, the alternative I offered was alternative to voting it down.
Yes.
And if the council decides to approve it, this council decides to approve it, but if there's a desire to continue to look at this, I think it would be better for us to discuss it as we have next meeting with the council put it down.
So you're looking for a motion to table.
Okay.
Motion to table.
I mean, I would just, I'm sorry, I would just say we once before voted one down, and we were told by Charlie that his only option at that point was to go to the second bidder and negotiate. So I don't think that that's really what we were trying to accomplish. That was with the one up in the north.
But that is generally what we do, is if we aren't able to reach agreement with the lowest bidder, we move on to the next lowest.
Yeah. I think before we do that, I would like the Attorney General to look at it and see what kind of legal liability we're proposing on the state.
So we take another 2 weeks?
You know what, retroactive anyway.
So we do have a motion to table. Is there anyone interested in tabling this?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of, what are we on?
152.
It's 52, right? Sorry. All in favor of tabling item 152, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
I can't say no to a table.
You said it last time.
Can't stop a table. Okay. Okay, well, with that, I guess we're tabling item 152. The drama continues. Okay, other items for DAS? Counselor Wheeler?
Let's see. The contract with Coke, I just want to, curious, where do we use, you know,
We had that whole discussion.
$380,000 worth of Coke sounds like a lot of sugar.
So it is, by the way, and I did comment, we shouldn't be drinking soda, but besides that, this is one of those commodity contracts that you folks haven't seen before, okay? And back in 2015, we did a statewide contract for soda products, in this case Coca-Cola, and what we were able to do was to bring spending of different departments together so we could get a better price. And so why are we buying soda, right? DMCR uses this for their vending machines. New Hampshire Hospital uses it in their cafeteria and also for patients. And Glencliff also uses it for patients and we believe for guests.
So we are recouping some of our money was part of the question I was asking.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
We're
understand
putting
that.
it in vending machines, we're getting state-owned vending machines, we're getting some of the money.
Creating revenue.
Yes,
I would ask Gary that question. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. Gary, do you happen to know if we're getting any?
I don't believe that the vending machines are creating any revenue for us.
Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah.
But somebody puts money in a vending machine, right?
Yes.
So where does that money end up?
Paying for the
Well,
product?
we pay for the product, so the money that goes into the machines will be...
Oh, so it does actually
Of the vending.
offset the cost of this
Yes.
product?
Yes.
So it
Yes.
is revenue. That's
It should be.
Okay.
69.79 for 16 ounces, selling it.
For those products, it should.
Yeah.
But for some of the, like Glencliff, we don't charge people.
Not for
So,
patients,
yeah, yeah.
definitely not.
Yeah, so it definitely, we have a little revenue. We added to the payphone revenue that we have in all the products. The $1.65 that we brought in last year.
Why are we buying the Coke, not the agencies that are putting it in their machines?
That's, the reason is in 2015, we brought the spending on soda products together into a statewide contract so we could get a better unit price.
Fine.
You went with Coke instead of Pepsi.
Apparently we did. I didn't dig out those records.
But those, to Councilor Warrington, point, whether it's renovating or not. I mean, Coke and Pepsi probably come out, I'm guessing, every 5 years or so and make a different proposal.
Gary has some
If I may,
Yeah.
So Coca-Cola is classified as a commodity. All commodities are the responsibility of the DAS procurement team to make purchases. So we have Coke beverage products that can go through the food contracts with these same venues, but they tend to charge a higher price. And in the case of Dancer, with all the vending machines throughout the various parks, it made a lot of sense to drive down the pricing and also add some revenue stream back to offset some of the costs. But it's a commodity, it would be the responsibility of our team.
But every once in a while, I assume, the opportunity is there for another vendor.
Oh,
Pepsi comes in
Coke,
and
yeah, sure.
the Pepsi will come in and say, hey, how about this deal?
Sure. Pepsi was not interested in really trying to secure the workers.
Okay. Two further questions, Mr. Gentleman, since you're here.
Yes, sir.
Is there somewhere a list of what is considered a commodity and who makes the decision on what's a commodity? Because I've seen that change over the years.
Yes, we
Could you provide that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Further discussion from our friends from the old. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all in favor of items 139 through 157, with the exception of items 153 and 152, which have been tabled, and 155, which is currently not used, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? With that, those items are approved. Our next executive council meeting shall be 3 weeks from now, on May 3rd. The sun will really be shining. What is it, 80 degrees tomorrow? Right? Get the gardening going. All right, we'll see everyone in 3 weeks.